How's it going, everybody watching this on YouTube? I'm here with Dan. So Dan's the head of data for STR Search. Dan is he's worked over at Google. I'm gonna let him give his little introduction. We are just gonna rip. I have said this many times that Dan is like the one person I can geek out on with Airbnb data more than anybody, and he can actually keep up. So if you want to watch two just straight up Airbnb data nerds go at random knowledge, we haven't prepared anything. We don't know what the hell we're going to talk about. We're just going to have a straight up authentic conversation and see where it goes. So stick around if you want to watch that. How you doing, Dan?
What's going on, John? Happy to be here.
Yeah, happy to be here too, man. This is going to be fun. So obviously we talk all the time. We've gone through a ridiculous amount of stuff already, but like I think this is just going to be a fun one to record for other people to get to see what we talk about.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it. So maybe you just give me my background, or what do you want to do?
Yeah, I was just going to say, like, build a little resume for people. And for anyone who doesn't know me, I'm just going to give a quick introduction, then I'll pass it over to you, and then we'll just go from there. So anyone who doesn't know me, John Bianchi, the Airbnb data guy, head of data for TechVestor, owner of STR Search. TechVestor's bought over 140 properties. I've helped them find them all, and every single last one of them is a positive cash flowing property within the past 2 years with high interest rates and expensive properties. So that's my quick data background to build a little credibility on the fact that I know Airbnb data. I've also got 6 free Airbnb data courses. So that's me. And then Dan takes it up a level when it comes to, so I'll let you give your intro.
Yeah. Well, I had almost 4 years at Google forecasting global call volume by country, and worked in telecom forecasting and consumer products before that, and caught the short-term rental itch, like many of us during the pandemic, right, when interest rates were cheap, the glory days of buying mountain cabins with 3% interest. And, obviously the revenue from that time was pretty crazy. I'm a very competitive guy. I like to win. So I was, obsessed about how do I build the Airbnb that's going to crush all competition. So I set out to build a brand new house after never building before. And, 2 years later, it's just crushing all competition, inspiring me to build more. So I help with our air optimizations, air evaluations, market research, and anything we need to point people with the right Airbnbs.
I'm sure your Airbnb is going to come up because I want to talk about like tactics and strategies and what you did behind there. But just want to mention, guys. So the reason I say Dan like takes it up a level for me is because I've helped allocate $70 million into Airbnb properties, and my accuracy has been within 30%. Like a lot of what I do is forecasting what I expect the revenue to be for these properties, and then we determine if it's a good property to purchase or not, right? And I'm accurate within 30% conservatively. So if I thought a property was going to make 100,000, we actually ended up making 130,000, but I'm still off by 30%. Whereas Dan, he's forecasting for Google, which is millions upon millions more than what I was working with, right? And you're accurate within 5%. Like that's your track record. Is that right?
Yeah. Within about 6 months out. Yeah, 6 months out, 5%. Kind of on aggregate. And obviously every forecast breaks down into like a million different small variables that can go different directions. But if you're kind of like accurate at the high level, it's good enough.
Yeah, I had Dan, obviously Dan, we're gonna cover a lot of stuff we've already talked about before, but like there was a moment where when we were going through the hiring stage, there was like 120 people I think that reached out for the position, and there was a lot of good guys, but then there was Dan. And it was like it was so clear that I was like, yeah, we're gonna be working with Dan, as long like we're gonna do whatever we gotta do to get Dan on the team. So absolutely love having you on the STR Search team because I feel like I actually talked to somebody who knows
I feel like we're the biggest data guys for short-term rentals in the world, and I'll bring the actual like masters in analytics and like the ML side of the AI to this, and you just bring like an insane amount of like valuable practical experience doing this for years, which is sometimes better than like studying it.
It's a great combination. I think doing it, I feel like you actually need to do it to understand the data in a way. Do you know what I mean? Like if you, I don't know, that's a hard one because I'm trying to think back when I first got started. I didn't have all the data knowledge that I had then, or even knew how to understand data at all, and I kind of just got started, right? So I don't really know what it would be like to go through all of my courses and then
but look, what I said to you in the interview is that like your method, like you didn't like invent the wheel on that method. You just like made it a little more robust. Like I think Rob Bilt was talking about that, which is stack rank your competition, figure out where you're going to land, right? It's not like a crazy like that's that. And I showed you that like 3-4 years ago when I launched my first one. That's the same process I did. Just stack rank all the 3 bedrooms within a mile from you and figure out who's obviously better than you and who's obviously worse than what you're going to put out.
So that what you're saying essentially is like look at the people that you're going to be going up against and determine if you can beat them or not beat them,
Like a
right?
logical comparison. Like that house is
Right.
way more expensive and they have more money for amenities and design. And like, how could I beat that?
So I think so for someone like you who, just naturally is good at this stuff, that makes a ton of logical sense. But where I think the people that I think I've been helping the most are the people where it doesn't come natural to them. And
Yeah.
a lot of them will make the mistake of not studying it enough, right?
Mhm.
So they will
That's the most common mistake out there.
that's
Yeah.
without a doubt, right? Because they'll actually it drives me the most nuts if we're we're talking very authentically here, right? So the thing that drives me the most insane when it comes to the Airbnb industry is the people that will just go, "Oh, I looked at like 10 comps and I'm probably going to beat this guy here," right? Like they're just like they look at it and they're like, "Yeah, of course I'm going to do better than them." I know how to design better than them, whatever it is. And then I go and look at their property and I'm like, "You're looking at like your property can't even compete to that one. Like your backyard is smaller, or you don't have a second living room for a game room, like, or you don't have the high ceilings that this one has, or you don't have the proper views. Like those views are 5 times better than yours, and
Right.
yet people are like overly confident that when they look at the comps, they're like, for sure I'm going to beat that property. Like of course I'm going to do better. And I even get this where some people look at like perfect listings and they go, yeah, I can beat that. I'm like, what do you mean you can beat
There's
that?
a phenomenon for that. It's like an overconfidence phenomenon. I forget the word for it is, but humans are like plagued with overconfidence, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I could definitely do that. I'm better than that." I feel like that's why our firm and what we do has value because we're the third person independent perspective
Yeah.
that's not biased by your rosy glasses. We
Yes.
bring like that hardcore just reality to you.
And I think that's the one, like that's a great way to put that. We're the third party, no emotion attached to it, and just being able to figure out like yes or no if it's going to do better, right? Because
Yeah,
everyone gets so emotionally attached to these properties. That's actually the one thing that we talk about all the time is like don't
yeah,
get emotionally attached to a property. I'm currently emotionally attached to a property. If I'm being
yeah.
honest, I
Same,
just said don't do
same,
it.
It's
But there's this one
my
property in a
baby.
market. Yeah, like, well, yeah, you also build your properties. I'm talking about one that's for sale that I've been trying to
Yeah,
get, like
that's
that
true.
I've had two
Never fall
clients
in
under
love with
contract.
something you don't have yet.
Yes, exactly, right? It's a I know it's a home run. I know it's a home run, like without a doubt. And so maybe I'm not emotionally attached to it in the sense of like, it's pretty and like I really like it. I just know that it's one of the best deals that I've seen in like a 2 year period. And I just
Yeah.
look at it and go like, somebody needs to own this that I know so I can watch how well they do. Right. Like either TechFester's buying it or one of my clients is buying it. Like somebody's getting it.
Yeah.
Because it's such a good property. But obviously, you can't share that one. It's not under contract yet. Once it goes under contract, I'll share that one. But let's talk about your properties, right?
Yep.
Pull them up on AirDNA. Let's just rip your property real quick and go back and forth on it
Let's
because
start with yeah,
I just want
AirDNA.
to, while you're pulling that up, Dan did what and I don't know what I'm trying to say here, but what you did, man, was like
Let me talk about what I did first.
yeah,
Okay.
I have my way of wording it. I just want to make sure I'm wording it properly. So you explain it, and then I'll give
Oh
my two
shoot.
cents.
I gotta log in on my other AirDNA account. Give me
Okay.
1 second here.
Okay. What I was trying to say, I'm gonna say, is that you went into a market where there's almost like no data, right? Or there's less demand, there's less travel, and this is the opposite of what I do. I go into markets where there's a crazy amount of travel, crazy amount of demand, crazy amount of data, and I look at everybody and I'm like, you guys are all no name chips, and I'm gonna come in with a Doritos bag and beat all of you guys, right? Like that's kind of how I
Yeah.
see the difference. And I'm like, I know how to do that. I know that we can do it. We have the money to do it. Let's get in there. And then it works. What you did is you went into a market where there was like next to nothing. There was nobody at this like really, crazy amount of money that they were making. And you were like, I bet you that if I did X, Y, and Z, I could dominate this market, right? And
Okay,
then you
yeah,
did.
let's just talk about this market. So, I mean, I lived in
Yeah.
Colorado for 8 years, and they always say, like, invest in what you know, invest in what you're an expert in. So, over
Yes.
those 8 years, I learned about every mountain town, right? And there's only so many places you can drive from Denver, and they're all west. There's like Steamboat, it's like Silverthorne, Dillon, Vale, straight west. There's places south like Salida, and you go all the way to Poncha Springs and Durango. And there's two national parks, I think three actually in Colorado, but two only kind of close to Denver. The Rocky Mountain National Park, millions and millions of visitors. People fly into Denver. My first house was near there. very competitive out there. And this other national park is called the Great Sand Dune National Park, and it's a 9 square mile of sand dunes that almost everyone in Denver does a weekend trip down to. It's people
Hmm.
out from outside of Colorado do not go there. You have to like live in Denver to know about this park because it's like a sweet 4 hour drive away and a cool weekend trip. And
Hmm.
I'd been down to this park, and I was looking at like where I should build my Airbnb in Colorado. I found this location, and I ran the numbers, right? 600,000 visitors, 200 or 300 Airbnbs. I looked at Joshua Tree. What's the ratio of Airbnbs to visitors? I looked at 5 national parks around the country, and I found that there was a lower density of Airbnbs. When you think about only like 400 or 500 across the whole valley to support 600,000, it's like that's not very many Airbnbs. It's a lower ratio than some of the more saturated markets and national parks. And what I noticed was actually this house right here was the number one comp at the time. And it did $83,000 estimated. And it broke down into a 2-1 and a 1-1, which is pretty genius. And it was a new build. And I was like, okay, I love this area. It's legal to operate in. The area around it's growing fast as hell. And the average comps, there's some cool stuff, but the average mountain cabins there were from 1960. There's no building codes there, so you can build anything you want. You can build a crazy hobbit home. It's like it's a laboratory of innovation. I was like, that's where I'm gonna go build. I messaged this host and I was like, who built this house? Like, this is making crazy money. And then they told me, and I called the guy, and he was like, yeah, I'll build it for you. So
Make it sound so simple. Can you pull that listing up real quick? Just so we can see. Let's look at like what was the top performer before, because
this was the
this
top
is
performer, and it's not a really great outside photo, but the inside of it is kind of cool. And it was a new build. It was built like 3 or 4 years ago. This is the 1-1 side of it. So they rent in Crestone. There's a lot of small groups, and during the
okay.
week there's a lot of small groups. So making your house
Okay.
break down into 2 separate duplexes is
So
smart, but the sound kind of bounces
okay,
around.
question for you real quick, because this is something that I would have avoided, and the reason being is because if I find a property where it's got it's split right between 2 units, and then they have a master
Mhm.
unit. So let's use an example.
Yes,
Let's say that it's a duplex, and on one side is a 2-1, the other side is a 2-1, and then they create a master listing for larger
yes.
groups of a 4 bedroom,
Three
two
and
bath.
3-in-1 listing, we call them,
Yeah.
right?
Yes, exactly. Right. So I have always, and I even like in my video about good and bad data that's on YouTube for like the past few years now, it states that if there is a combined listing, avoid it, because those numbers are likely inaccurate, because you get the
Yes,
bookings from if somebody
yes.
books up the 1 bedroom,
Right.
one bath,
It thinks the whole thing is booked out when only a
right?
part of it is booked out.
Which means that the occupancy level is always going to be higher for
Mm,
the top.
maybe.
Maybe correct.
It
If both
depends
of
how
them
it
are
goes.
getting
If
booked
you're
out,
always selling the 2 different parts of it, it's true
but
that
how
you
do you?
got
But
the total.
you don't know if it's always being sold, right? Like maybe it
But
is,
in
maybe
this,
it isn't.
so the best research you always can do is calling the agent, like, and they put that house up for sale. So I called up the agent and
Oh,
I said,
beautiful. There you
send me
go.
all the reservation data. I've done this many, many times, which is like,
How close is it?
and they were really, really close. They did earn about
Okay.
$80,000. I've done this on this house. This is the biggest house in the area, and it only actually earns 50K, although AirDNA thinks it earns 70. And it's got these gorgeous valley views. It's got 5 bedrooms with queens in them, nothing outside the house. That's about it, right?
Looks like a place where
And
I'd live. Where it's
when
like
this
next
this
to
is
one.
for sale for $550,000, and I was like, all right, send me the revenue. And it was managed by a big property manager in town that used to be a cleaner, and she's not
Okay.
very good at managing properties, and I can see that through her data, because
Yep.
this house should make 70, but it only makes 50 because she has a 3-day minimum in a 2-day average nightly stay market. So she's reducing her funnel significantly down. And if there's a 2-day gap or a 1-day gap, she can't sell that because she doesn't allow 2-night stays. So there's certain operator decisions that cause the data to be wrong. Now, it's not wrong in that this has a 70K potential, but it does not earn $68,000. But if
So
I took it over from this lady, I would easily make it earn 70 or more.
right. Okay. Question to bring it back for a second here, because
Yes.
I know that you are a good operator. You could come in and you could outperform, especially most people, right? But what I'm curious about, because now I didn't realize that one of the main pieces of data that you used was like this duplex, right?
But it
If
wasn't the
you
only piece of data, though.
sure,
I
for
also
sure.
saw there were like things at 70K that were very average, not good.
Okay, so so that makes a lot more sense rather than just using that one piece of data. But what I'm wondering about is if you didn't have that direct data from the realtor because they were selling the property,
I still would have
would you
came in. I
you
still
still
would
would
have
have
came
came
in.
in?
What I did, what did I do here? I took the most successful strategies from Joshua Tree. I watched Rob build, and he's like, "Listen, the most unique, best thing you could build is a treehouse. The second best thing you could build is a yurt. The next thing you build is a geodome. All right, after that, these cool modern cabins. You probably remember Casa Conejo or Casa Mariposa. Looks very similar, except this is a two-story version. So I just copied the outside aesthetics, and I found a design that I liked. This house was an attempt to build a geodome, right? Building one geodome by itself, almost impossible. Why? Residential zoning does not let you put up temporary structures. This was
Mm.
all a hack, which is the whole marketing behind it is the geodome. But this was all a hack to build a geodome, which I had to call an art studio, and I needed a permanent structure to have a temporary structure. So it's like, fine.
Did you just say you built a house to build a geodome?
Yeah, this was a hack to do this because this isn't a residential area, and if you want to just do one geodome, it's like you have to get a campground permit, you got to put a septic, a well. It's like, unless you're in this like wild west county that like almost doesn't exist across the U.S.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Which is
This is
the
the most
Joshua.
wild west county there is, and they don't let you put up a geodome in a
Yeah.
residential area.
You said one recently of like the people in the middle of Texas or something like that being able to do it like in the desert pretty well, right?
And they have a commercial operation. Like, they have a permit
Oh,
to
okay.
do that in
Okay.
the desert. They're
Yeah.
not like you can easily do this if you have a house and putting this in your backyard, but doing a geodome on its own, just one of them, is very inefficient,
Mhm.
and it's probably not a great idea. But
So okay.
this is
So
what makes this successful. It's all about the glamping. Like, no one even talks about the cabin. It's so freaking cool. The views are unbelievable. It never gets brought up in the reviews. Never. It's
so
all
this
hot tub, geodome, and now the fire pit and stuff.
all right. So this is actually now we're talking about stuff we haven't talked about before ever. So now I'm like now my
Yes.
curiosity is peaking, right? So you're telling me that you knew you wanted to build a geodome because you knew that it had
Yes.
like the most creativity
The
and the most
uniqueness,
appeal. Yeah.
experiential
Right.
premium, if
Which
you
clearly, I mean, looking at that photo, anyone looking at that's gonna be like, holy hell, right?
right. You look at all my competitions photos of their
Yeah.
right, and I also saw another. This guy has this crazy dome house, so I knew domes would do well. This guy does 80K, and it's a 1-bedroom dome. It's in like a 2 or 3 dome complex. This is like a 1970s build. It's run down. It's kind of shitty, but it's one of the coolest things around. And he's actually number 2. And there's like 6 beds in 1 dome. So I was like, clearly domes, Crestone, work.
Yeah.
I'm just
I
gonna
mean,
like
don't so
Burger
one thing
King
that
this
we
guy with a better product.
yeah, that's a super interesting home. And then obviously yours is better. But
This is like a half mile down the road, quarter mile down the road from me.
interesting. So one thing that we know from studying all this data I know you know this, and that's why I'm just looping you into this, is that
Yeah.
certain ideas that work really well in one area work really well in other areas, right? And
Yes.
like some
Yes.
things are just naturally true across the board. And I think that's one of my favorite things that I've learned is like, hey, this idea here in this other market worked extraordinarily well when we were hyper focused on families, right?
Yeah.
Let's take that exact same concept and bring it to this other market where it has never been tested, and let's see how well it does. And we
I
have
think I have this data point that shows you that freaking works. It's like going back to like these
well,
strategies, right? Your strategy is to be a big fish in a big pond, right? You want to see a big pond. You want there to be lots of luxury demand, lots of operators. I have the opposite strategy. I'm a big fish in a small pond. I see a small pond with a bunch of little minnows swimming around, and I'm like, I'm gonna come in as a grouper, and I'm gonna eat all of you. And other people are gonna come in and they're gonna try to copy me, and
okay.
that's fine because I'm gonna put the bar up so high that we're all gonna level up the market together. Like, this
So
market
here's a
on
question though.
average is not a profitable market. You come in here, you make 10% gross. No one chased me into Crestone because it's not worth it. You could come into any market and do this same thing. It's just like produce something at such a high level past everybody else that you give a people a reason to pay you more. I don't even necessarily charge a ton more than my other top competitors. I just get way better occupancy.
Okay, I got a couple of things I got to ask on this.
Go.
So, can you stop sharing your screen for a sec, just so we can just
Yeah. Yeah.
so okay, I need to say them all those I'm going to forget. So let me ask all the questions and we can go through them. So the first one is when you were when you're deciding to go into that market, did you realize that it didn't make sense to purchase a property there only to build? So then
Absolutely. I
therefore,
was like, everything on
okay,
the market there was crappy and old, and I don't like renovate. I renovated my first one. I don't want to do it again.
Okay, so you knew that you had almost like this moat around this property because other people
Yes.
wouldn't be able to buy easily and be able to cash flow,
Because
so no
like
one's really going to
building
enter.
from the ground up is the riskiest thing you can do for short-term rental, and it takes the
So
most amount of like balls. So if you do that,
yes,
also new builds have this premium, just like new cars sell for more, new houses rent for more than old houses. They're
yeah,
just
yeah,
cleaner, they're cooler, they're nicer by nature.
yeah. People are willing to pay more for something new. So then the other part then is when you were running the numbers on this to try and figure out if it was worth it to build or not. Did you were you okay if the property made only 80,000? Like, did it still
Yeah.
work
So I
at
built it.
80,000?
I built the whole thing for 450. That's land, labor, materials, everything, house, geodome, everything together. Right.
Okay.
And the top comp in the market was doing about, 75, $80,000. And my like I bet I could do 30% more. So the way I built my point forecast, the way I built my initial year one forecast was to take the 75th percentile of 4-bedroom revenues per month and multiply it by 1.3. I shit you not. And I got within 2% of that number in my first year.
So so
I just
we're
said, I bet I could
we
do 30% better than anyone here. They're all shit. And like
we
now I'm on track to do way better than that. That was 100K in my first year, but
yeah.
80K would have been great too. I would have still
Well,
cash
you would
flowed
have been
well.
fine with 80K, but 100K
I
is
had
way
a
better,
4%
right?
interest rate at the time. Now I
The
probably would need to hit 100 to do that same
the
thing.
the funny thing about this is that we've literally started off this conversation with like, hey, we are probably like the two biggest Airbnb geeks in the entire world, and we're both really good at forecasting. And your forecasting was probably 30% higher. Like
And
that was
that's how you have to do it. Sometimes you don't have like people are giving me air valuations for a product with shitty competition, where like the top comp in the market
right.
is like, wow, you can definitely beat that. And the question now is, how much can you beat it
And
by?
this is where always I've done that, like every single TechFester property that I've ever analyzed, whenever they send it over to me, I go, this property can do, let's just use easy numbers, 100,000. I go, look at all these comps. We're definitely going to do better than them. I feel super confident at 80. Our absolute worst case, or sorry, 100. Our absolute worst case is going to be 80. But I also know that this one doing 100,000, we are going to dominate. We're going to crush. We're going to do
Yeah.
so much better than. I have
Yes.
no idea what the top of this market is going to be.
Yes. And that's why
And,
you're
and
under forecasting by 30% because you don't really want to give them the like 30% above anyone else forecast. You want to give them like a little bit above everybody else.
yeah, exactly. And it's actually not even until like the past less than the past 6 months or so where we've finally been starting to go like, hey guys, we're sometimes outperforming by like 100%, and it's like
Yes.
we know why we did so much better with this property in comparison to the other ones. Therefore, we can buy properties that might cost a little bit more because we know that they are going to do better, right? And it's like,
Yes.
so that's a part of, using that internal data. So before we were like, hey, we're definitely going to hit 100, right? Like at a minimum. Now we're like, okay, we hit 150, right?
Mhm.
It's like we can buy something that's a little bit more expensive now because we're going to hit that 150 if we needed to. Mind you, right now we don't need to, so we're just trying to hit home runs every single purchase. But
I mean, it's a
anyways,
difficult question. What price property to purchase, and it's unique to every investor, right? Techvestor is trying to efficiently deploy lots of capital, so
yeah,
like trending towards like more
you,
expensive without being crazy expensive is right for them. But for some investors, like they're capped on how much they can borrow and how much the down
yeah.
payment they have, so they have to kind of
So
work with that formula.
I'm going to share a market because I just want to talk about it with you. Um, what is it called? Port Lucie, something like
Port
that.
Lucis,
Saint Port Lucie. What is it called? It's in
is it Florida
Florida.
market? Yeah, sounds like a Florida market.
Saint Lucie's. No, Saint Port Lucie. Did I actually get it right? Port Saint Lucie. Okay. I don't know why. Oh, I was saying Saint Port Lucie. Okay. Um, Port Saint. I knew Saint shouldn't have been beside Port, but I was trying to figure it out. I was like, that doesn't make sense.
Port Saint
Um,
Lucie.
I'm still spelling it wrong for shit's sakes.
I think it's ST, but I don't know. Yeah,
It
ST.
I think on AirDNA it always makes it type out.
If you just type in Lucy, I bet you'll find it.
Okay. They also just there we go. Appreciate it. Okay. So this is a market that I consider to be one of these ones where everybody is doing shit. And if I were to come in here, we would dominate, but I don't know
Mhm.
by how much. And so then therefore it makes
You
it
don't
really
always need
difficult
to
to
know
enter
how
into.
much. You just need to know that, like, if I am the top comp, I'm at 20% gross. And if I beat them, if I can hit 30, 40, 50, it will be unbelievably. And I don't need to know exactly. It's like the concept of like aim for the stars and like you might land on the moon. It's like, I know
Yeah,
that anything above these people is profitable. And
yeah.
I can at least use comps from other markets. Like, for example, we know like pool houses in Miami and these other major metros can make X amount of money. So I can kind of extrapolate that to other markets. Sometimes, it's tentative, but like I know
So
that like Bill's tiny home in Joshua Tree could make this amount, and I know like Geodomes make this amount. So I from elsewhere, and I can often bring that in to this
So
market
the,
if it
the
has
problem that
upside.
I have with that, okay, so I don't disagree with you whatsoever, but the problem I have is that I can't take any risks, right? If somebody wants to take it, like you, I think that you took a risk with the market that you went into
100%.
simply, right? Because you're like, I think it's gonna work. I feel confident that I'm gonna be able to perform. Blah 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 blah. Like you were, that's kind of how you were talking about it, and you nailed it, right? Like if I were to take my own money, actually, I'm planning on taking my own money and building a property that is going to be a higher risk in comparison to anything that I've ever done with TechFest or anybody else's money, right? But what I'm going to show you here with Port St. Lucie is that the data tells us that we'd be at this like 15 to 18 price to rent ratio at the best case scenario.
Mm-hmm.
And so if that were to be the case, then
You don't have to
if
beat
we
it by
hit that,
very much to hit 20, right?
if we can outperform everybody, which I strongly believe we can, which I'm trying to get to this data to be able to show you. If we can do that, then we will be able to dominate. Then we'll be able to cash flow in the way that we'd be happy with, which would get us closer to that 20% price rent ratio that we look for, right? But we have to assume that we are going to beat absolutely everybody, and this is what scares me because we've gone into another market before where we did assume that we were going to be able to be at that top of the market and be able to, outperform by quite a bit. And what ended up happening was we outperformed by a tiny bit. So, you were just saying that you
Yeah,
overperformed everybody by 30%.
right.
We overperformed by like, I don't know, what was it? It was like 5 to 10%. So it was nothing crazy. And the reason being, or the reason I think that this happened is because that market had no luxury demand,
Right.
right?
Right.
So there was no one willing to pay a arm and a leg to stay at any of the Airbnbs because there was
Yeah.
anyone going into that market was it wasn't an extremely desirable market. So
No.
people weren't going to pay a really high ADR to stay there. They would rather just stay at any other of those listings, right?
And
So like,
that's one of the main thesis of what you and I look for when we're trying to find a new market for clients is that there has to
right.
be an inherent luxury demand. And why
Ye-
I
yeah.
feel hyper confident about any national park market is because of the demographics data I have seen about national parks.
Right.
70% of people that earn 150K or plus have visited a national park in the last year or two. And it's like it's an activity and a location that's disproportionately visited by higher income people. Every national
So
park. So by
okay.
building
So
luxury
then
things that don't exist there, like, and I was a luxury tier traveler in a place with no luxury properties, so I kind of was my target customer as well.
which helps a lot, right? Start with what you know, which is what you said earlier. So with that being said, we're going to look at this real quick. And we have the one problem that I've been having is I don't think that there's going to be luxury demand that for this specific market. And so then
What's
therefore,
before we go into properties? What are the prices that people are paying? What are the average daily rates of the top people, and what are the properties?
well, let me get this organized real quick and then we'll pull that over. Uh, I can pull over ADR. I usually don't, but I'll pull it in for this one. We'll get the
Seven
Airbnb
hundred
host.
bucks a night, the top couple people, or six to
Well, I
seven.
don't think it's fully organized just yet. So give me 1 second. And then we also need, how about a brain fart? There we go. Need that. And then we need the reviews. So for anyone who's like watching this right now and they're like, what the hell are you guys doing? This is just how we look at data. So just pull this out of a program that is very expensive to have, but it allows us to look at all the data in the best way. And then I'm organizing it for all this information right here is what I use most often. So that's why I've done that. So let's organize this from who's making the most to who's making the least. So look at this. This is what I'm talking about, right?
Now look at this drop off. Two people at 200K, and then we have two people at like 130K.
And then it's a drop off. Okay. But now, mind you, I haven't cleaned all this data, so it's going to be a bit of a shit show as well.
It's
See,
okay.
there's a ton of people that are not. Oh, wait, I've got these backwards. I always go Airbnb first. Okay, so let's do this. Let's just rip open these ones here. and let's look at everybody doing 75K or above. And we can check quickly if they're good data or bad data. Oh, it's a host. Okay, give me 1 sec too.
I hate when that opens.
I pulled in the wrong column. All right, let's get rid of this one and pull over this one. There we go. And then let's make sure that we're looking at the top ones doing 75K or more. You'll see what I mean quickly once I get to this. I 6-bedroom, 4-bath. I mean, it's already a shitty listing. Like right just within seconds, you can see that it's not a good listing. All the photos are not really well done. They're kind of all over the place. It looks like just a massive
It's like an
home.
attempt at a good listing, but it's like falling short.
Yeah, I mean, it's bad photos, right? Like 90% of bad listings are bad photos. But is this one actually doing that amount? So we can see week 1, it jumps. You got April. It actually looks like it might be doing it. This here, if this is real, this is a really, really helpful piece of data that did not exist about a year ago when I looked into this market. But it seems like they have reviews almost every single month, and they are in VRBO as well. So that might be real, right? As a 6-bedroom, that would make sense. We can even see the next one here is a 7-bedroom. And so, here, see, this is why I don't believe this one within a flat second. This is a nice big house, but this one is like right on the water, and it's an even bigger house, right? But it says that these ones are doing, let's take a look, 4 days ago, 3 weeks ago, April. So what I'm obviously doing for anyone who doesn't know is just checking the reviews to make sure that it's actually good data. If they have a review every single month for the past year, then it's likely being rented out full time, which is a huge piece of information. So it looks like both of these are actually good data.
Yeah.
Okay, so you got those 2 homes doing about 200,000, which are both 6 bedrooms, 7 bedrooms. Kind of feel like these really large homes, probably
huge bedrooms, waterfront, like they're probably really expensive. This one.
See, okay, but then we get this one. What's wrong? What's up with this one, right? Like 5-bedroom as well. That was a 6-bedroom, but this is a 5-bedroom. This one only sleeps 10 guests, and the revenue on this one is 133. But anyways, we can get a general idea of what it looks like. I'm wondering if these
lost
ones.
The pool. Oh no, we still have the pool. They're just didn't
Still
show
the pool.
They didn't show it off in the first 5 listings. That's why they're making 50K less, because they're hiding. They're hiding the 35% amenity.
I had to look for it right here, right? Okay, then you got this one here, which is another one of these. Like this is actually only a 3-bedroom. I'm assuming that there's some sort of luxury touch to this one that maybe
this is huge ceilings. You can see this is like a luxury 3-bedroom.
It's on the water. There you go. So then this one doesn't open, and then we get into this here. So this is where I really wanted to get to, which is like so this one is doing 85, right? So these ones here are what I find the most interesting. So this one is a shitty listing, like 113 reviews, 3 weeks, May, March, tons of reviews, no April. Actually, it kind of misses quite a few. So we're actually missing February as well, December as well. So we have to check, see if that has a VRBO listing, which it does not. So let's just mark that as bad data. So we don't go through it again, because that's not useful. And then we get to this one here, 97 reviews, 3 weeks, May, April, March. Okay, so you kind of get the idea of what I'm trying to get across here, right? This is a home that's a 4-bedroom, 2-bath, and this is what it looks like, right? And just for anyone who's watching this and you think that I'm kind of being a dick by showing these properties, I just want to show a comparison of another property within the same state that is what we're used to. So this is what we're used to doing, okay? You can kind of see the color it's used, the way it's put together, the way it's designed, the way the photos are taken. This is an elite Airbnb listing. It is one of the best ones in the area. So you can get an idea, right? And if we compare that to this one here, you can see the difference between these two and just kind of the way they're put together. Not saying that this is a god-awful listing. I'm not saying that at all, but I
would call this like a B+ design. It's like a owner did this himself. They're throwing in color, bright pillows. They're just not like A++, like I'm so super professional doing it.
Yeah, and then they got, looks like turf at the backyard. They've got a good, fire pit set up over here.
It's like the poor man's TechVestor listing almost, right? It's like they're checking a lot of the boxes, but like they just didn't check every box.
That's a good way to put it. So the reality is that home there is doing $80,000 a year, right? As a 4-bedroom. And if I were to kind of continue through here, you would see that there's more that are kind of similar to this. This is a 3-bedroom that only sleeps 6 people. This is a 4-bedroom only sleeps 8 people.
And I would call these like basic houses with pools, right? And we see these all over pool markets. It's like there's nothing extra to them besides having the pool.
Exactly. So then if we head over to Zillow, okay. So again, the whole point of me going through this is just simply to be like, it doesn't meet the price to rent ratio. Oh fuck. Let's go Florida homes, and then
And
we're
what we would
gonna.
actually do, what I did for you and Techvestor, is we would go find all of the top Airbnbs. We would find them on Zillow, all the ones that we could have, and we would find what their value is currently, and then we would find what they purchase it at. And if top current Airbnbs could be bought at their current estimate with their current revenue, a market is obvious to enter. But if we
Yeah.
could like level their revenue up further and buy it at today's prices, then it's definitely like an enter.
Yes, exactly. So take a look. So like, let's just use any of these properties here. I was using a 4-bedroom there as an example. Let's say,
Let's just do a 5, since 5, 6s, and 7s are.
yeah, but then we're getting into like a different range. So I kind of wanted to do like a like for like, you know what I mean?
Okay.
Because I haven't like studied those ones in depth yet. Those ones at the very top there, and I don't fully trust it. But I'm just trying to find a comparable property. I have it organized by lot size, and this one's been on the market for way too long. So let's just take a look at this one here for a second. I'm trying to find again I'm trying to find a listing that looks similar to this one here, and I feel like this one is very similar, right? It's got those same high ceilings.
The angle of the photo is the same too.
Okay, and this property here costs $650,000. Now it's got a nice big lot to it, which is going to make a difference, but in comparison to the other ones, so let me actually just try and do. We can keep that one open as an example. But let me just grab another one. So let's just go.
But basically, you're saying like if that house only made 80 to 90K as is, 80 to 90 divided by 650 is only about 15 to 18% gross yield.
Yeah, pretty well, right? So here's another one doing 600,000. Let's pull open our underwriting sheet for a second so we can actually look at it. And if we do, let's just do 625 because one was 650, one was 600. We put 20% down on that property. And let's say we put 100,000 into it between furniture, design, renovation, everything. And
Easy.
Then the operating expense is going to be, let's just put at 40,000. It might be, 40%. This is all of your operating expenses, including, the cleaning fees, the utilities, like all that stuff, right? We'll put at 40%, but then let's move this to 80. Who else is in here? Taylor's in here.
Taylor's
in
here.
Let me make a coffee real quick. I'm screwing up this sheet.
Both in the template, just battling.
Yeah, going back and forth. All right, so let's go 625. 1, 2, 3. And then we'll go back. He literally changed everything instantly. All right, so 100,000. We're at 40% operating expenses, and we go 80,000. This property will cash flow $7,000 a year if you self-manage it.
On a $237,000 investment.
$237,000. You're going to walk away with $7,000 a year.
And you're buying in Florida, which is we're in kind of a scary time to buy.
And then if you add in a management fee, you're at 15%, and you're at a negative $5,000 a year, and you're losing 2% of your money every year.
And then your insurance goes up next year by another $2,000, and then you lose more money.
Right. So the issue, right? If you were to change this, like say you weren't operating well and you're at 45, or maybe you operated do well and you're at 35, you're still negative, right? I mean, if you change this even to 0, you're working for an entire year to take care of this property to walk away with 11,000. And again, this is technically like the highest of good data other than these up here that we haven't really gotten too deep into. But the idea is that this market only has 4 properties that are possibly making that amount, whereas the vast majority of them are doing 80,000 or less, right? And so when I look into this market, when I was studying it originally, so like let's say that 80,000 is what that home is able to do, and I look at this home and I go, I know that we can outperform this home without a doubt, right? Like I feel super confident that we could put together a listing that would be far more desirable. It would look a lot more like this one, right?
Right.
I don't know how much better we're going to do. I don't know how much luxury demand this is going to have. So when I go and look at this sheet here, I can't just type in that we're going to make $140,000 a year because I'd be making it up, right? I can't say that we'd be doing, even $100,000 a year because again, I'd be making it up. That would put us at, 21,000.
Oftentimes in forecasting, you have to make it up, and it has to be based off of the best possible assumptions you have. I was a forecasting analyst for products in Family Dollar, right? The dollar store. I mean, the supplier wants to release a new product they've never released before. How many units are we going to sell, Dan? I don't have
This
anything
okay.
to base it off of, but there are ways to solve this problem. There are ways to do it. We can base it off of other most similar markets. We can like use these expected ranges of like, I know I'm going to be better, but the safest way to say I'm going to be better is probably just forecast for 90, right? It's probably like 90 through 130 is probably a very safe range. Knowing what we know about what houses with pools with the right set of amenities and design does. But the hard part is that
So
we don't, until you know the market and whether there's a demand for it, like you said, you might not
this
always
is
by that same amount.
this is a perfect time to bring, like, this is the difference between you and I, and I've mentioned this to you before, is that I use the Burger King logic, right? Which is the Burger King logic states that McDonald's, sorry, how does it go?
Yeah, okay.
But
McDonald's spends a lot of money on where to go, and Burger King spends no money and goes across the street, right?
exactly.
And I kind of use both, right? I kind of Burger King that one house I showed you, but then I kind of became McDonald's in this market, and now
Yeah,
everybody's Burger Kinging me back again.
exactly. Right. Like, so what I was just, and exactly what you just talked about as well is the McDonald's strategy, where it's like, hey, you have some data that you're looking at, but you don't have a direct competitor that you can replicate, figure out what worked, what didn't work, right? Which is why I study the markets where there's thousands of listings, because now I have
Yeah,
1,000 different data points to figure out, well, what worked, what didn't work, and then I will just do the thing that is the best, right? It's like having 1,000 McDonald's in one market, and you're just like, oh, that one's making the most money, I'm going to go right beside that
oh,
one, right? But so this is why I love talking to you about this data side, because I'm learning like how to do the McDonald's side of things. Because when I look at that Port St. Lucie, my first initial thought is, I bet you if we did put a property in there, we would do 90,000 pretty comfortably, right? Potentially even 100,000 pretty comfortably in comparison. Then my next thought goes, how many times could we do that
yes,
before we run out? So we got
right.
4 people there that might be making over 100,000. Majority of people making less. And if, as we were looking at some of those listings, they weren't bad. None of them, they were all like in the B category, right? Even the ones that we were after the one doing 80,000, they were clean photos, but there was nothing exciting about them. There was no strong amenities, right? And so how would you figure out,
Yep.
how would you, like, what's a process that you would go
Well,
through?
this is
Because
something
I'm
I've thought
genuinely
about a
curious.
lot, which is saturation. And like, when are we going to saturate a market? How many entrants does it take to really water ourselves down? And I don't think there's a really easy way to answer this question. And like myself coming in as like a McDonald's in a market where there's not one, we're doing it one time is super, super safely, right? And I'm about to
Right.
do it my second time. I'm about to put up a luxury
Right.
A-frame that should probably beat that number one unit and make 150 in a market where
Right.
nobody ever made 170 because I have myself as a comp. I'm not like probably going to put up five until I see them. I'm probably going to go incrementally and slowly. So I don't think these like small fish markets are good places to say, I really want to put 5 to 10 units. I think the big fish ponds are the best place to do it. I think the small ponds are best for the individual investors that say, I don't want to go toe to toe with Techvestor. I want to go toe to toe with these fools, these boomers that put up really crappy numbers. And that's what I like to go toe to toe with boomers because we're marketing to ourselves and Gen Z, and boomers
that's
are
a,
so bad at it, and like millennials are the best. But
that's
like
such a
like
good
I said,
point.
you just like I wouldn't try to dump a ton of money. I wouldn't try to take too big of the pie. What is too big of the pie? I don't really know. I'm one of 300 units, and I make about 2% of the revenue of the pie. So I'm like a 0.5% of supply, and I make 2.5% revenue. I bet I could take 5 to 10% of revenue of these 300 people without
Right.
considering the market. So what I
Now,
look at is 5 year growth. Is the revenue over 5 years growing faster than supply? And is demand growing faster than supply? I've shown you
yeah.
these aggregate annual numbers. And if the market's growing fast enough, there's new demand coming in. But if the market
What
is
if it's not?
saturated and cresting, we're splitting up the pie among the same amount of people.
So, a couple things you said there. The one thing that I love that you said is that going into a market where you're competing with people who don't have Techvestor level money to like throw at properties, right?
Yes.
And so then therefore you can potentially beat out your competition with less money. That is
Yes.
something that I haven't done a lot of studying on because I haven't had to, right? Or like that wasn't where my main focus was for the past 2 years. And so I fully agree with that. There are definitely markets where you can go. I mean, we just looked at Port St. Lucie, right? I
Right.
bet you I can find a property
Yeah,
there
I
that.
found some like coastal Wisconsin markets. It's embarrassing. The level of competition is freaking embarrassing.
So then maybe you can get one, right? But okay, so this is what I always freaking stress about, man, because we've done 140 properties. We have so much real data that we can look at across a good amount of markets, okay? And we have only one where everyone was making 80,000. They were all shitty listings. We came in, we're like, we're going to dominate this market. We're going to crush all these people. And we only make around 80,000 to 100,000 per property, which is not dominating the market, right? Most of these other markets we've entered into, people are making 100,000. We're making like way above that, right? Like way above that. And so there's like this huge premium that was missing in that market that we were able to capture. But it's because it had that luxury demand pull. So if I were to go into a market, let's actually talk about this, because let's play hypothetical for a bit here. Go back and forth. Maybe we can actually sort this out. Because like anyways, let's say that we wanted to find a market that didn't have a crazy amount of demand. Sorry, didn't have a crazy amount of competition, that was at this like elite level, but we knew that the properties there, like we could outperform them all. We knew that there was some demand, but we didn't have an idea of how much demand. But we wanted to go in. Like, what's that process that, I mean, you've kind of already done that, but how do you go in and feel confident? Like, what, other than just your own personal local knowledge, if you were to go do it again right now and try and find another market that you could enter into that was a similar sort of like thing, yes, you can beat those people, but how do you know that there is luxury demand and people willing to pay more than what they're currently paying for the Airbnbs that currently exist?
And I think it goes back to like my thesis being centered around national parks and what I know about national
What if
parks.
you didn't do national parks? Take out national parks.
All right. Well, I think it's hard. I think this is the hardest problem. I think this is why we as a firm have value, because I think finding these undiscovered gems is a diamond in the rough. It's a needle in a haystack. And it requires that personal knowledge to a certain extent, because it's really hard to throw a dot on a map and be like, Hocking Hills, Ohio looks like such a great market, right? It's like, oh my God, everyone does new builds there. And it's like, you see that what happened to Hocking Hills is like what I'm trying to do to like a random other corner. And it's like, just if you follow the state and national park strategy, this is a lot easier to find, because small towns surrounding national and state parks have shitty supply. Always. Like an example of this is like a similar national park that's a mid-sized one. There's a couple of them that I like Acadia National Park in Maine. 5 million national visitors, highly seasonal in the summer, dog shit. Excuse my language.
Can you buy properties though? Can you buy properties though?
But you could build something,
Wouldn't that ruin? So like the theory that we were trying to figure out right now is like with the idea of your market that you're in, you can't buy a property there.
But that's why I do what I do is I build, and I think you can renovate. Renovate would be another strategy that would
play
work.
Hypothetical though. Let's play hypothetical for a person who's trying to buy, right? Yeah. And so what we're saying right now is that most of these national parks, it's really hard to buy a property that's going to work because of the price of that property compared to the current demand of that property. Yes. It actually makes more sense to sometimes build in comparison, not always, but Dan's exact experiences, and even the Acadia National Park up in Maine, right? Mm-hmm. But okay, here's my 2 cents. This is what I'm thinking is that if the one thing that we're looking for 2 factors. One factor is shitty listings in a market. Yes. The second factor is demand, right? Luxury. What kind of demand is there? And ideally a luxury demand, right? A good example of this is like people are not paying an arm and a leg to go to Cleveland, right? No. Or like the small towns around Cleveland. Now, mind you, there are some massive like 7-bedroom bachelorette type homes that are crushing it in Cleveland, and yes, that is working, but that's different from what I'm trying to say, right? I'm trying to say like in the market that you're in right now, people are paying an arm and a leg to go to a 2-bedroom or a 3-bedroom, right? To just to be able to be in that area. So you almost need this like perfect combination where there's luxury demand, there's bad listings, but there's still properties that could be purchased.
And like there could be some evidence of luxury demand. Like the market I entered, like, if you categorize AirDNA by like price tier, and you could see that there was some unique luxury demand. There were a couple people out there that were getting the price that I needed. There were not very many, but there was evidence. And like, for example, this is like, you're like, you said before, you shouldn't you put a hot tub if there's no examples of hot tubs, right? I looked at this market, which is a hot springs market, tons of amazing hot springs, and all of these amazing mountain cabins, none of them had hot tubs. And I knew a hot tub drove significant revenue, so I did it. And like, I used that additional amenity that people were lacking to help drive justification for high.
I just want to
You feel attacked?
I want to repeat that real quick, because you said that if there's no hot tubs, I say you don't have to put a hot tub. But
Yes.
so it's the must have amenities compared to the nice to have amenities, right? The nice to have amenities
Yeah.
allow you to be able to outperform people. So if nobody has it,
You're right.
it's a nice to have to be able to
You don't
compete.
really
And
need to have it in this market to make the average revenue, but the average
right,
revenue is not possible. It's not profitable. So
right.
to be
So
profitable, you do need to have it.
I think the main thing that I'm trying to say here is like, what is the what is how do you identify luxury demand? And in like one way you said there's little identifiers, right? And maybe what it is that a one bedroom is doing really well, right? If a one bedroom is performing really well, then maybe that means that yes, it'd be like a romantic getaway, but at the same time, if people are willing to pay that much there, maybe they're willing to pay for a larger property as well that could bring in more.
I mean,
That
I
could
would.
be a single
Chris, the
indicator.
market I go to is mainly a couples market, and 100 out of 250 units are one bedroom houses. And the top one bedrooms make 60, 70. I know a one bedroom could make 80. I stayed in those luxury top one bedrooms, and I was like, sweet, but you're missing XYZ, and I would pay you more if you had XYZ. So I was a
Okay,
customer.
so
I visit my rivals. I am the kind of person that would pay $200-300 for a one night stay with my wife and a luxury anniversary trip. And I just know that nobody is producing the stuff that I see luxury one bedrooms in Joshua Tree, luxury one bedrooms in Broken Bow, luxury one bedrooms I see in upstate New York. Nobody is doing that in a market where I know it's mainly couples. I know they come from a place where they make a lot of money in Denver.
so okay, so what you so this is what we're getting down to. You're saying that there is a city nearby where people
Yeah.
make a lot of money,
Yes.
and you have seen that there are one bedrooms that were doing fairly well, right? People are paying like $200 to $300 a night for those properties. It's within driving distance. To the locals, it's something that everybody knows, and they're willing to go there. Maybe you don't
Correct.
have that local knowledge, but you could talk to somebody and try to understand why people go here, right? And so then, so what you, with those multiple indicators, you go, that's showing me luxury demand,
Yes.
right? And then you go, the supply sucks, but we have some sort of luxury demand. Now, obviously, we've gone back to national parks, but I wonder if there's other things that would be outside of that. So I think the key thing there is Denver, right?
Yes.
Denver
Yes.
being within that driving range. So then,
80% of people are all coming from there for me.
right. So I'm thinking of a city as well right now where there's one of my favorite markets, and it's about 3 hours away from the city, and it's like the place where the wealthy go from that market.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
super unknown. It's so easy to win in that market, but it's
Yes.
where the wealthy go. So I know there's luxury demand.
That was my exact formula, right? Is draw a 3 hour radius around your city where you are, especially if it's your first investment, and list all of those markets, right? And then list markets that are traditional vacation markets, research the regulation, find legal stuff, legal places to go, or Wild West like me where there's no regulations, and then find
Right.
places where the competition level is low, and it looks like there's a place where you could get a 20% ratio by either building or buying and renovating.
I'm wondering right now if you were to, so if we just pick a city that like neither of us have know about, right, or have been to, Seattle as an example.
Sure.
I've studied so many places, so I already know
Yeah.
where
Yeah.
Seattle.
So
Where's that?
let's pick a
Anyways, if
place
you just
outside
pick
the
any
U.S.
city, right? Like you pick any city that
Buenos
you
Aires.
no. Let's go. So in the U.S., you pick a city you don't know it, right? So like say I didn't
Atlantic
know that
City.
city.
Yeah, I don't know it for short-term
There you
rentals.
go. Talk to him, talk to somebody there, and be like, hey, where would be the places that people go that have money? Because I'm thinking of my own hometown. In my own hometown, which is like Windsor, Ontario, Canada, it's
Mm-hmm.
not really a wealthy place whatsoever, but there are a handful of people that do well within Windsor. They all have a golf club that they go to. If you made it in Windsor, you are a member to that golf club and you
Yes.
live on a certain street. And like
Yeah.
that is wealth in that city, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you take that sort of wealth and you compare it to something in Toronto, it's laughable in
Yes.
comparison, right? But to that city and those people, that is a lot. And those people, where did they go, right? Outside of the city, that would be considered like a luxury stay for them. That would be like a nice getaway for them. That's a little bit more expensive. Maybe it's like a country club. Maybe it's some sort of like golf course that they're going to. I'm just curious, where do those people go? Because those are going to be the people that um, would be willing to pay the most. And
Mm-hmm.
even like you're explaining for yourself out in Denver, you have this like national park that's not the main national park, but people in Denver know about it, and you're creating this really nice romantic getaway for anniversaries and things like that out in this area, and then therefore you're getting these higher nightly rates because you're kind of creating that like romantic experience premium,
Yes.
and so now all of a sudden this property here starts to make a lot more sense. So I'm trying to like work backwards your formula to
The
see how
formula.
you could repeat it, right? And I think that's it. I think that's how you repeat that
One
formula.
of the key things about my market is that I saw the underlying revenue per year that everybody's earning combined growing significantly, growing about 50% on average for 5 years. And I'm like, the pie is getting so much bigger, so much faster. And that
What if it
rate
wasn't
of growth.
growing?
So there's another market I'm studying and looking at, upstate New York, Lower Hudson Valley. If you look at all the Airbnbs combined, it used to be a $17 million market. Now it's a $50 million market in the peak of 2023. It's now dropped to $48
Okay.
million.
Okay.
So it has stopped growing. But there
Yeah.
clearly is, there's 25 to 30 one bedrooms that make over $100,000, and not all of them are that nice. So clearly, even though the level of growth has slowed off, it's a big enough, mature enough a market where it's clear if you go build one tree house at $500,000, like the top comp, the Willow Tree House in Woodstock, you will earn $130,000, and it's like almost guaranteed that you will. But like so it's less risky. The mature markets are less risky. The high growth markets are riskier.
How much did you just say? Say that again. If you were to build a treehouse, you'd build
like a
you'd make how
luxury
much?
treehouse, like I don't know, 3, 4, 500K. It's going to cost you to put a treehouse up. 1 bedroom, 1 bath. It'll make you $100,000 to $130,000.
So
in
this is
that's fully mature and saturated.
okay. So this is more up my alley, and this is more more of like I know when it comes to the mature markets, and I've been given this example recently of a mature market, right? And this idea of like it's decreasing. Why would you enter into that market? All these different things. I see Airbnbs as if I would be walking down a chip aisle in the grocery store, and every single option of chips is a no-name brand, right? And it's like the regular, no flavor, whatever. And that's what Airbnb has been for a really long time. And especially in most markets, that's what like 90% of the listings are just these like no-name chip brands. There's nothing exciting. And then all of a sudden, a Doritos bag wants to get into that aisle, and they're going to take over the place of one of these no-name brand places. They're going to essentially like almost kick out that bag of chips, and now Doritos is an option, right? And they're going to kind of take up a section of the aisle, right? And the reason being is because they're better option, and people want them more than they want the no-name brand regular Lay's chips, right? Or whatever it may be.
Brand name premium, you'll pay.
Exactly, right? It's better quality. There's more flavor. There's all those different things. And that's how I see these Airbnbs, where it's like, you're having these, like what you just explained would be Cool Ranch, you know what I mean? Yeah. Doritos showing up in the aisle and just like kicking out this other thing that nobody wants, right? Or even it would be like what we're seeing now, where like the organic chips showing up that are, have anyways, you get the idea. It's something that's better than that was there before, and then therefore people are willing to pay more for it, and they want it, and it's kind of taking up that spot, and then the other worse options are getting kicked out. However, with all that being said, right? You just said that you would create a 1 bedroom, 1 bath, and there's quite a few of them. I have a general idea of the properties that you're talking about. Do you want to share them? Can we take a look at those?
I'm actually I don't have a ton more time on this.
Okay. This has been fun.
Actually, I could, if you want to pause for a second, I can go grab a charger and I can do another 15, 20 minutes. I can pull up some of these, but
just go grab a charger and I'll keep talking. Just tell me the place, I'll pull it up.
All right, Woodstock, New York. Or Cairo, New York.
Cairo, okay. I know Cairo. Been to Cairo. This is too fun of a conversation to stop. So, Cairo. I should know how to spell this. Do you know how to spell Cairo? Yeah, like the city, yeah. C-A. Yeah, I think so. I'm just trying to find the one in New York. Lower Hudson Valley. There we go. Appreciate it. Thank you. All right. So we've got 157 listings, and these are the ones you've got to be talking about.
Yeah, I don't think the treehouse is going to show up here, but if you just this is one of the ones that was in my data set, right? This is a 400 square foot tiny A-frame set on, 5-10 acres, makes 107K. It cannot have costed much more than $350 to build.
You're talking about this one specifically, right? Obviously.
Yeah.
So, wow, look at that, eh? Okay, so obviously there's key features to this. The fact that it's extremely remote. It's the longest little water sign.
Right?
Huge, big deal, right? Tiny, but it's got a nice little deck, hot tub, that whole setup. I think there's actually
this is the miniaturized version of what I'm building right now. It looks exactly like it.
Right. I think there's actually a ton of room for improvement with this.
A ton, right? What is this fire pit? Why are we using logs?
Yeah.
We don't have. It's nicely done. It's above the 90th percentile, but it's not what it could be.
It's beatable, is in other words, right? You can beat that property. Now,
There's at least some meat on the bone. There's not a ton here.
yeah, let me clean up this data a little bit. So we're only looking at these ones here. Get rid of the ones without the reviews.
And this is like a small subset of this market that I'm talking about. But if you looked at like the annual revenue in this market, it's not growing significantly, but there clearly is opportunity. But it's mainly on this like newer build. I don't think the short-term rental industry has a ton more opportunity to just buy and put up basic stuff. There is, but like the most of opportunity in the market is to build these more unique stuff where you get a premium. You guaranteed to get a premium in revenue for a treehouse, for an A-frame, for unique stuff. You know, and normal houses get the premium factor unless you do extra.
This is the question that I wanted to ask you when you were like, we were about to get into it, right? I know. So what I put in here is just the lower Hudson Valley. So now we're looking at everything. We're looking at there's literally 1,800 listings that fall between the 1 to 2 bedroom range, or studio to 2 bedroom. Let me just leave it at studio.
There's a treehouse right there, 146K.
Yeah, this one is like
occupancy.
Yeah, this one is okay. So this is a different example. I just want to kind of point this out. This is a extremely unique thing that is a one of one, right? Whereas
this
something
is the
like
outlier of all outliers. Yeah,
exactly. Whereas this is this here, there's a lot of A-frames. There's just a lot of A-frames.
This is never going to come up on the MLS though. You're never going to be able to buy this
for sure.
A-frame or almost
agreed. Now. So, but this is the question that I want to ask, and I don't know if you have the answer for it, but the question I want to ask is, when you look at this data, okay, and you see that, even if we were just narrow it down just to the 1 bedrooms, I just don't want to, I'm going to keep the studios in there as well. I just want to keep the studios to 1 bedrooms because sometimes they change it up. When I look at this, what I see is a ton of these super unique properties, and they're all doing, well over 100,000. They're really well put together. They're really beautiful, all this different stuff, right? Again, I come back to that question: how many more of these could you possibly put in there where they're still continuing to make over 100,000? And on top of that, a lot of these listings are pretty beautiful, right? And I guess we literally just talked about how we
and if you look at how many 100K plus in this data set, right, it's like 25, 30 plus people, that especially ones that have good data. So I would be confident, me and my partners talk all the time about putting commercial units, and if you were to put a commercial campground and put 1 bedroom units, how many of them are you comfortable with in a market like this? 5. 5 is an easy number. 10 plus is a scary number. 5, because that's only 25% of the current population of 100K plus houses. And what I would assume is that if we put up 25% more top tier houses, we're going to suck money up from the bottom, right? Money kind of gets funneled up with its quality, and the people that are making 70, 60, 50, where the other stuff was booked, will book ours instead. And we can even outcompete some of the other 100,000 people. But I wouldn't want to increase the supply of luxury 1 bedrooms by 50%, for example. I would want to
so you're just saying,
I don't have exact reasoning why that. It just feels a lot scarier to me, a lot riskier. The probability of cannibalization, right? It's like I work for a dog food company where we're introducing a 32-pound bag of dog food, and we have a 12-pound bag and a 16-pound bag. What's going to do to sales if we? It's like the same kind of question in short-term rentals. Are we going to cannibalize the average revenue? And that has to do with both if the market is growing and if there's enough examples of people earning enough, and how many bad people there are, because what you do, what I do is I put bad operators out of business. People that have no business being in the short-term rental market, put little effort into launching it. They're making less than they used to because people at the top, the income inequality of the short-term rental investors is exacerbating because the people with the haves, are taking all the revenue from the have-nots.
Yeah, agreed on that. But at the same time, it's 2 different groups of people, right? So the people that are willing to stay at this place are not the same people that are willing to stay at the place that is at the very bottom of this, right? They can't afford they can't afford it.
There might be more demand that there is supply for luxury stuff, and they might be willing to take a lower tier quality. The people that were coming to my market and were paying me $400 didn't used to pay $400 because there was nothing worth paying $400 for.
Right. So and now that they're willing to actually do it, right?
There's only 5 luxury 1 bedrooms and they're all sold. It's there's nothing left in the market,
Yeah.
For someone to pay more for.
This whole time I'm trying to just get to this one very specific.
Upstate New York is served by New York City and in Boston, and there's 30 million people within driving range to you. So
this is, I actually did this accidentally, but I'm glad I did it. So I didn't mean to do this, but take a look at this. So I scrolled down, okay, because I'm like, yeah, they, not everybody's going to pay the premium to stay at these places that cost 100,000. And so then I was like, let me scroll down and actually see what the other places look like. And what I'm seeing is that you have these actually super unique properties. And look how many people are within this like $60,000 to $40,000 range, right? So if we were to go from, let's say, right about here, so we're at 64. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25.
Yeah.
I'm at 25, 26, 27. We're at 45. So that's a $20,000 range. 45, what was that? 28, something like that. 28 times 4. So 28 times 4. We're looking at 111 listings that are all falling within the $50,000 range, right?
Yeah.
And so now the concern that I would have with going into this sort of market is, what am I going to do to my property that's actually going to allow me to not fall within that $50,000 range and instead fall in the $100,000 range, especially when you have properties that are unique that look like this. Now, mind you, this we already I can
and this
see
is why I do what I do, and this is why, like, when I do stuff like this, I'm only interested in the tree houses. Only. I don't have interest in doing like basic small black cabins like this, because, or even the den outdoors type build you just showed with the pool. There's 117. Yep. I think there's this premium to elevating things, right? That's why, like, the whole short-term rental industry, like, you and this job send me on rabbit holes researching tiny markets, and I find a treehouse at the top of a data set every single time. Every single time. It's like
the same idea with like pools, right?
Top of a mountain or a treehouse.
So now that I've looked into this, so this is part of the research process for, obviously, right? So as I was saying this to you, I was like, oh shit, look at all these properties, they're making 50,000.
This is $100,000 piece of structure. That's
right. So it's actually, and look at, there's the other one right there, and there's the other one right there. So one, they don't have
some Getaway or one of the other commercial operators that roll these out of a factory for $100K. I think this is Getaway.
These ones, so like this is not a good listing. Okay, so it's cool. Yeah, this is a super cool camping option. You're going to be in the woods. You're going to be close to somebody else, but you don't have a lot of amenities. You don't have seclusion. You don't have a pool. You have a tiny little place. But obviously, they paid a lot less for this in comparison, so they're probably making a great return.
$400 in the summer. Like, this is Getaway, I'm pretty sure, and I've looked at. They have like 30, 40 locations around the country. Yeah, they have 20 to 40 units in every single one.
Yeah, Getaway is cool company.
And they book out. My partners just went to their site, their location, and upstate in Catskill. It was sold. It was a car in every single one, and they sell for $300 to $400 a night, and they're $100,000 units.
Yeah, look at these, eh?
But like, it's really run down, and they really let a lot of the like wilderness grow up around these things. And it
imagine trying to maintain the wilderness around.
Most of them don't even have the gravel that you're seeing actually around. But like there's
barely anything
hideout that produces off a factory. You can buy these and put these down, and at 50-60K revenue, if you can do 150K all in for the land and the structure and the utilities, that's great. That's how it's like an opportunity.
58 of these, and let's say they're all doing 50,000 a year.
Even if it's $200,000 per unit, like, those are the economics bedrooms up there.
Yeah, it is. Mind you, there's not a great resale value on these though, right? So like what you're talking. So if you were to look at, let's say this right here,
right? If you're selling a campground, you get a multiple of NOI.
True.
If you're selling a single family home, it's what Joe Schmo's house next door would sell for, and like the
great point. Maybe it actually is a better investment.
Oh yes, I could sell my tiny 1-1 houses at a much higher valuation than if you built this on a residential plot.
But if you were to sell the entire campground, which is this entire
what 20, we were just looking 20 at to 40 units of these,
yeah, they're I just did the math on it real quick. They're likely making around 2.9 million across this campground. So then
gross
what's
yield.
their
campgrounds have a 20% gross net yield on that.
So you're saying they're making 20, like you're saying okay, so then 2.9 times by, let's call it just 3, so $870,000 a year they might be making from this, which is, that's beautiful. I'm sure it costs a bit to get set up and the operations, and maybe it is a little bit run down, but
it's gonna cost. It costs them $2-3 million to do it, at least. Like, the land is hundreds of thousands of dollars. It's just a lot of effort, and like there's a lot of like, it's much harder to run 20 of these obviously than one.
I guess it's a different thing altogether. We kind of like got lost in that for a second, but the idea that we were trying to figure out is, how do you it's the same fucking process. I don't know why I'm even questioning it, but the idea of like, how do you know that you're going to be able to go into this market and be one of those properties doing over 100,000? when there's maybe 20 of them that are doing over 100,000, and there are almost 1,000 that are not doing the 100,000, right?
You know, you'd
But
have to put
obviously,
up a product that seems like an extremely high probability of being in the tier, right? There's
yeah,
clearly like tiers to all of that too, of like quality
yeah.
and size.
Like if you were to take your dome property that you have and the structure with it, and you were to put it in that same market, it's obvious it would be a
Yeah.
better property, right?
It
It
would
would
make
be a better
150 up
property than most
there.
people.
It would make more than I could make in Colorado, I bet. But I know it would make at least of what I made it out there because it's got like a higher income, more people
High,
around it.
more demand. You could even like honestly, just going through some of those listings, like they were not great. The amenities were not great. The outdoor area was like, maybe it was secluded, but you had nothing to do. The one that we were looking at, the A-frame, has the logs that you can sit on. People gotta stop doing that. You know how uncomfortable it is to
Up
sit
to the
on a log
logs. Give me
for like
$400
4 hours?
Adirondack chairs or nothing. You know?
Imagine paying $400 a night and you're sitting on a log. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
aesthetically pleasing in that photo, but like, give me a comfortable chair
And
so I
how
can
much
hang out at the
extra
fire.
did it cost that host to do real
Right.
chairs? Like you
You
could
could
have
do
just done
both.
the $30 plastic ones, and I would be happier than the stupid
You
logs.
literally do both. Put the log cabin, put the piece of wood, and then put the the chair beside it. I can't say that freaking word. Drives
And
me nuts every
this is my crusade in my life: is looking at cheap fire pits where they put like thousands of
time.
dollars into the build of the fire pit and the cheapest
Right.
chairs. And I've seen it time and time and time and time again. If you're watching
Yeah.
this,
Show
if you're
someone
made
an
it to the end of this
example.
video, don't put a cheap fire pit in your short-term rental.
That's
Like spend
I
like 7K like I did, like
well,
TechVest.
don't do a hat. Okay, so pull up one as we're talking about this because I fully agree with you on this. It doesn't make any logical sense. There's tons of people out there
A
who
cheap
are
one,
who
you're
are
saying, or a nice one?
yeah, the cheap one, like the half-ass one, where like they get the
This is
wood
what you
structure
just showed
around
me.
it.
It's just pull up the little one, right? I don't know. It'd
But
take me a second.
so Dan goes through listings all day every day, and he just like slacks us these photos of like things that drive him nuts, and one of them is like these properties that are half done, in a sense. I was hoping you could actually show one because I
Yeah,
fully agree with
I'm
you
gonna
on
pull
this.
up the channel and see if I can find anything.
I think I'm going through the channel right now too. Oh, we can't go too far back. Okay, never mind. It's not going to be in there. Anyways, doesn't matter. The whole point that we're trying to get at here is like don't put half a property in, right?
Like
Or
there's
don't put like
tiers to
half.
amenities basically. It's like a hot tub, a game room, and a fire pit are not all made the same, right?
No.
The fire pit could have a deck around it, a
Hmm.
pergola shade above it. They'll pay more for
Yeah.
that. The game room
Yeah.
can have all of these machines. They'll pay way more for that. The fire
Yeah.
pit
Well,
can be 7,000 or $200, and they'll pay you way more for the 7K one.
yes. Bring your amenities to life. So I actually am going to try and find an example of this because this is one thing that I've talked about so many times. Like it has to look like I don't know. There's a way to make something look more desirable, and when you do that, people are willing to pay more for it, even though it's literally the exact same thing that they're going to be getting. It just looks a lot cooler. So I've got some key examples here. So let me share my screen, and you can. I mean, I'm not going to find a bad example. I'm just going to show you this one here because this is good enough. But look at this fire pit setup, right? With the hanging lights, the flames going, you got the sunset going. This is just sexy. It's appealing. Like, right? I don't really know a better word for it, but the hot tub is really what I wanted to show here because most people just plop in a hot tub. But what we did
Yes,
with this one is we've got this thing above it. We got the string lights above it. We've got a
it's like
bar on this side, a
1,500
bar on
bucks
that
on
side.
Wayfair, I think.
Say again.
It's like 1,500 bucks on Wayfair for the pergola that you guys put up.
This above.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Didn't know that. That's not my that's not my side of the business, right? But I wonder if there's like a quick example that I could find, but it'd be hard to find a hot tub. Actually, this is
Well, I mean, most hot tubs out there have nothing above them. Some are put on decks. Like I think this is on a patio
perfect example.
with
Look
a
at
roof
that.
above it.
Dude,
Yeah.
it's found me 2 seconds to find because of the difference. So there's one, and look at this little fire pit. There's not even room for people to sit around that fire pit,
Yeah,
so I don't know what's
there's
going
like
on there,
and
right?
there's like tiers to this. And I want
Compared
to
to
make a
this,
tier list video. If people love tier list video of fire pits, like
look
let's
at
find 10 fire pits and let's rank them all. Let's find 10 hot
yeah,
tubs.
like this is what we're trying to get. This is what I'm trying to get at here. You have the amenity, bring it to life, make it a lot sexier in comparison. I even have a better example. One I realized more recently is like
And
a
like the worst,
unbelievable
most
example.
egregious example I've ever seen is when people have a hot tub and they don't even take the cover off, right? The
Oh
cover
yeah,
never comes off. It doesn't show up in the top fire photos. Like there's both levels to how you market a hot tub like this, obvious, right? Like
yep.
one is edited, and I think it's even a little Photoshop because that's what I did to my hot tub to make it look more appealing. It's like
You just bring it.
Photoshop
And I think some people have like a hard time with like editing it where it's like, well, that guy's clearly fake. It's like, yeah, it is. But what
no,
we're doing here, right, is you're creating a moment that people feel, right? When you're
Yeah.
sitting in a hot tub, you're on vacation, you're with your friends, you have an amazing time. It feels like that. It literally
Yeah.
feels like the sky is pink and you're having this amazing time. And it's like,
Yeah.
it's great feeling, right? That's what you're bringing out when you see
It's
a photo like that.
emotion, right? You're
Yes.
selling emotion, and
Yes.
your pictures have to convey emotion,
This
right?
is,
And like warm
I've said
feelings.
this so many times. You have to get people emotionally attached to your listing. They have to,
Yeah.
because when people are going through, it's just like walking down the chip aisle. They have
Yeah.
100
Million
options.
fucking chips.
There's so many options, and they're looking at it and they go, which one do I want? And you've got to somehow get them emotionally attached to your listing. And then they go, I don't know why, but I want to stay at this listing.
It's crazy that like maybe 50% of homes that are selling on the MLS use shamelessly edited Twilight photos, but less than 5% of Airbnb hosts do. Why?
True.
We're both
True.
selling our house. I'm renting it instead of selling it.
Right.
But like, it's crazy that this concept of like, yes, obviously edit your photos, obviously throw in edited sunset photos that look a little fake, but they look nicer. Like, lately, I sent it over to my friends, and he edited this sunset. I had a decent sunset behind, way better than
You know what I
had.
love about that photo too? So you recently did these, and I've been absolutely loving them.
And he edited the hot tub to be open too.
Yeah, and then also the inside, you can see the bed inside the dome with the lights on like that. That is honestly that's the selling point. If you didn't have that, it wouldn't. Because when I see this photo, you don't look at the sky. The sky's an aesthetic in the back of your mind that makes you happy, right?
Look in the middle of here.
You look right in the middle. I actually didn't even look at the hot tub until you just pointed out. I looked dead in that middle the entire time, and I was like, that is where I want to sleep. I'm like, that's cool, right? Like, that is cool. And it pulls you in, and now you're emotionally attached to it. And the thing is that people are renting out these Airbnbs, especially one like you have right there, where they're paying that premium. They're renting it out because they have this excitement. And I always try to say that you want the person paying for the Airbnb to feel like they've won before they book it out. So as an example, if I was a guy, which I am, I don't know why I said that. So if I was trying to find a Airbnb for my anniversary, and I wanted to make sure it was special and that my girlfriend was having felt like she was having a great time, if the way that I win is I find a listing that she's going to be excited about before we get there. Yes. And that image, that photo, that setup, I can show her that listing. I go, look, babe, I booked this out for us. She's going to be like, holy hell, that's amazing. And her reacting to that, her excitement in that moment is worth the extra $100 a night. Or whatever it's going to cost.
Parents with kids, right? What TechFaster does, it's like you give the parents a chance to win. They show their kids this. Everybody is pumped for the vacation.
Yes.
It's worth that extra money. It's like hype. I like to egg people on and show them that they can do it. It's like, and hype people up. And that's what short-term rentals is. I got to hype up my customers more than my competition that this is going to be sick. That's why and then they go in there. Photos, the edited Twilights, like the
they go in there feeling that, right? They go in, they feel like maybe it's not, of course it's probably never going to live up to that excitement, but they feel that excitement. They're like, I'm happy to just be here. This is a cool listing, blah, blah, blah. Like they feel like they've got something cool that they went a little above and beyond for to be able to get, right? So
but
like the
pricing of that is so interesting because last year when I made $100K on this, I thought I was maxing out what people will pay, and I leveled up my photos, added lifestyle photos, added that an next amenity, and I am 25, 30, 40% above what I sold, and I was already number one last year. And I'm like, the top, it's really difficult to know how high the top is because there's such levels to this stuff.
Yes. Okay, so then that actually brings me to your pricing question. Whenever I did my pricing back in the day when I had my properties out in Chicago, what I would do is I would put a number that I would never think would get booked. But it was because I was taught when I was younger that $1,000 is different to everybody. How I feel about $1,000 is different to how you feel about $1,000. And so then therefore I should never take my feelings about money or a certain number and attach it to everybody else. And so I always put numbers that maybe just feel ridiculous, right? And those numbers would be like I put up my hotel, my Airbnbs for like $3,000 a night in the summer because I was like, let's see if somebody bites, right? And people literally bit. Like people booked a place out for $3,000, which I would have put it around $1,200 because that's where I felt comfortable. And so, but it was my way of, I was like, I'm going to find the top of the market by putting a number that's so ridiculous, nobody's going to book it. And I'm
That's
okay
why
with
I
that.
stopped putting maximums on my pricing, because who am I to tell Price Labs that I can't get that price for it?
Yeah.
I spent a lot more time on my average, and I let it go nuts on the maximum. And then I'm really aggressive. How I shit on my competition is I allow 1 and 2 night stays, and I drop my price during Sunday to Thursday when only 20% of us will get a booking. We know that historically. I will be one of those 20% by being a lower price and a better quality than you. And on the
That's
weekends,
like
I will be by far the highest price, and I'll be the last one to book.
that is literally the strategy that I've been using for 6 years now. Is I go, because again, I study the entire competition. I'm not just looking at my property or 5 properties. I know what every single Airbnb looks like in the market that I'm going into. I know every single last one of them that's worth knowing about, right? And I look at them, I go, my property is going to be better than every single last one of these. Therefore, if my price were to be the exact same as their price, I will get booked out almost every single time, right?
I want to show
And
you some pricing. This is stuff we can go for. I hope people watching this are having fun, because this is good
I
stuff.
hope so too. I mean, I'm fucking,
I want to
missed
show you the
2
price
meetings, by the way.
to illustrate what I'm talking about competition and what I know about the level of competition and the percentage of people in a market. There's 2 ways to say, are people sophisticated in a market? One, are we using pro photos? What percentage of people are using pro photos? I hope to have a tool to analyze that for each market soon. But there's proxies in AirDNA you could look at. And the other one is, what percentage of people are using smart pricing? Since studies are very clear that if you use smart pricing, you make significantly more money than people that are not using smart pricing. And now let me show you my competitor set in my market in Colorado and what their pricing is. Right, the black and the red lines is my pricing. The orange, green, red, purple, and blue are all the other 4 bedrooms in town. Do you see any level of sophistication here? Do you see
Come
any
on,
level
nobody. What you're saying is nobody is doing smart pricing.
I'm saying these people don't know what the heck they're doing. These competitors that have these gorgeous houses with hot tubs, another brand new build in my town, right? All of this is this is my biggest competitor. They just do flat pricing at $444 a night. And I'm like, wow. This is $20 a month, and it's making me $60K more than you. Look at my pricing. My algorithm's like, sure, like in September, let's go for $1,300. No one else is pricing it $1 higher than the days around it. Like that's why, like in our optimization reports, I spend more time than we used to on, are you using smart pricing? Because you can do everything else right, and then you could be like my orange friend here, and you can or some of my other friends that they're pricing at $200 a night and they have 95% occupancy. I'm like, you could increase your prices by 30% and you wouldn't drop 30% occupancy. Like, this is so dumb. These people, boomers, have no idea what they're doing.
The dumbest thing about that, probably going to offend some people that are using this flat price pricing, but it makes no logical sense. Weekends are more desirable than Wednesdays, right? Therefore, they should be more expensive.
It's not just more desirable. There's more demand. In my market, everyone sells weekends. No one sells weekdays in the off season.
It makes no sense. I always used to tell people, whenever somebody comes to me like, hey, what's the ADR average here? I go, I don't know. I have no idea. I never look into it. I do not care. I understand that there can be an average and maybe it could be helpful, but your pricing is going to vary so much that if you're putting a flat rate, you're doing it so wrong. My properties in Chicago would go for anywhere from like 15 to 3,000, like I just said, for a Saturday night in the summer. The Thursday would go for about $300, right? Like I could barely get more than $300 to $400.
Give away that Thursday. Why? Because you're large group properties. Large groups only come on the weekends. My Dream Dome is an 8-person property. 8-person groups only come on weekends. They don't come through Sunday through Thursday.
They can't. That's how the society works, right?
So I can only sell a Monday through Thursday in my 8-person property if I price it for 2 people. And I get tons of couples that will choose an 8-person property over a 2-person property if it's the same price. And if there's
goes right back to what we were just saying. The best strategy in the entire industry is to study every single last property within that market and then be able to know that yours is going to be better than them. And then when you want to get booked out more than them, you just simply lower your price to their price and you will get booked out almost every single time over them, right?
And that's just basic like economics and demand,
Yeah,
right? It's like, are you
yeah.
going to choose a better product, the same price, or a worse product? You need to know what they're pricing during the weekdays. And you need to be like, screw you, I'm $5
Yeah,
less. And they're not watching their pricing on a weekly basis. Most hosts just set it one time and forget it. I'm
which
sitting
is
on a weekly basis. I'm manually overriding prices. I'm being
yeah,
like, and once you do it for a year, a single property, you can look back last year and be like, oh, I couldn't sell this Monday to Thursday at 250. Let me try it at 200 or 175. And let me use
yeah,
historical data to then update my understanding of what
yeah.
demand will be for these
That is
prices.
also just to, now we're getting into pricing, which is something, well, I mean, we've been on top pricing, but one of the biggest mistakes that I ever made with my company or with my early properties was that I didn't know November sucked in Chicago. Like it's
Yeah,
one of the
totally.
worst months in Chicago.
It's
Whereas
absolutely horrible.
September and October were significantly better than I expected. They almost did as well as like June, July, and August. And so that kind of blew my mind. But then all of a sudden, November was trash. And I had priced November the same way that you would price September and October, and nobody booked. And so I actually lost money in my first November through Chicago.
Yeah,
Looking, the next year, I had all of November booked out like 2 months in advance for a fraction
right.
of what I
Because
was
you had
doing the other
more
day.
and more data, you had more lead time,
Yeah.
maybe. I mean, one of the
But
ways I
technically,
make so much more is by picking up quarters when other people only want to pick up a dollar, right? Most
say that
people.
again. You do
So
what?
So I pick up a quarter off the ground when people
Okay.
only pick up a dollar. And the best way to
Yeah.
describe that is a minimum, right? I allow 1 and 2 night minimum stays. And on a
Okay.
one night stay, in the off season, I'll take $350 all in for a 1 night stay at the Sheridan place because that's the only way I can get I'll give my cleaners 150, I'll keep 150. In the summer, I'm
You
getting
do nothing.
reservations that are $1, $2, $3,000. But my competition says I only want a 3 night stay. I don't want these 1 night stays. I don't want to do more work. I don't want any reservations in the $300 to $700 price range. And I'm
Yeah.
like, 19 of my reservations in this period of time, like 30% of them were 1 night stays. And if you're not willing to take this like lower price, smaller reservation, lower nights in off season, your total revenue is going to be way lower than it could have been because I pick up all the quarters and that leads to way more money with the dollars than the people that only pick up a dollar off the ground.
And the crazy thing about it is that it literally means almost no extra work for you.
No.
And the cleaner gets the work, but the
My
cleaner
cleaner
wants
wants
the work.
my cleaner to make more money. So it's like
Yeah.
if I'm giving them 50% of a 1 night
Right.
reservation,
So
I don't really care because I wouldn't have made that. They wouldn't have made that. Like we're
right.
all better.
All you have to do is all you're doing is you're changing it to a 1 night stay, and then all of a sudden you make you all you did was make one little adjustment, and you make $150 multiple times throughout that time period.
Times 25 times 30 in June in
Right.
this month alone, I made an extra $2,000 off 1 night stays. Where if I just kept those days blocked, don't allow them, that's like 20% of my revenue in 1 month. So
Yeah,
there's some of
exactly.
these little operator things that's like, yes, you need the best property. Yes, you need the best design and amenities. But like, if you're not also pricing it way better than your competition, you're not going to expect to outperform that much. But when
Yeah.
a market is that unsophisticated from a product, a design, and a pricing standpoint with some luxury demand, it's like, that's when it all kind of comes together.
And that last statement should be its own little reel because that is exactly the key to everything, right? It's a lot of the people who have bad photos don't know how to do the pricing
They
either,
also have
right?
bad pricing, right? They
And
also
they
have bad
also don't
description, a bad
understand.
title.
Yeah, they don't understand like they don't understand how to make the listing look good. They don't understand the how to make a hot tub stand out and look sexy and make it very appealing. Like they just miss all of these components. Whereas somebody who's spent the past hour and a half listening to us go back and forth understands these things like left, right, and center. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And they're like, okay, well that makes sense. That makes sense. Or they're learning as they're going. Like, okay, these are things I need to pay attention to. But really, like you can almost tell when somebody's I mean, majority of the time, if I see bad photos, I go bad operator. Bad photos, bad operator. Because if you can't figure out the photos part,
Yeah.
how could you figure out anything else?
Marketing.
Right?
It's the basic
Yeah.
marketing fact. Yeah. You
And
can't be that good at your automations, your systems if you didn't even hire somebody for $100.
and that's the no name brand of chips that we're talking about. The regular bag, no flavor, nothing. Like that's what we're seeing where people are, I'm going to design it myself and I'm going to take photos with my iPhone. And maybe that
Yeah.
worked in 2020 when everything was going great, or even 2017 where everything was going amazing. But nowadays it's just not going to cut it. And as we
Prices and
continue,
interest rates are so high, you're not gonna get by unless you do
right,
all these things together. The confluence
exactly.
of
But on top of that, you're not going to be able to compete within that market, right? So yeah, the interest rates are higher. and everything. So your expenses are going to be higher. So then therefore you have to make more money per property for it to even work out in the first place. But on top of that, everybody else is crushing it. And so now you have to crush them, right? To be able to compete, because it's a business that you're in, not just anything else. And so people are falling behind because they don't know how to compete with these people and they have these higher expenses. It's like, and the thing is like your property, it's not going anywhere. You're probably going to continue to manage that property
I
for the
built this
next
moat. That's
10.
why I build. It's riskier. There's execution risk, but I built this moat around me that like
Yeah.
no existing products can compete with me. And you have
Right.
to have like balls of steel to come build something. And people have.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
have. People have taken a swing at me, but it hasn't really. It's not knocked me off my tier because so few of those people can do that.
Because they're not, there's so many other factors that they're not considering, such
And
as
there's so many
pricing.
other shittier units that are
Yeah.
not new build out there.
Exactly. So what I guess what I was trying to summarize up there is that Airbnbs are just continuing to get better, and
Yeah.
the ones that are great are not going anywhere. Whether that one person continues to operate it or the next person comes in and takes it over, they're going to stick around. Like, and then on top of that, every time that somebody's entering into that market, they have to then go, how do I outperform this guy, right? And then they do it again and again. Like Techfester constantly is trying to outdo its own properties in
Yes.
its markets to keep figuring out what is the top, what is the best. And then we're taking what we're learning, we're bringing it to the other markets that are less sophisticated, and we're doing it again. We're rinsing and repeating in these other markets that work really well. You're already doing it. You're building another A-frame, right? In another area where you already know that this works over there, so you're going to do it over here, and you're
it's
going
like
to
right next
dominate
door to the
again.
other house. It's like let's just add another one and keep beating everyone.
Exactly. So imagine this trend continuing for the next 10 years. Right?
Yes.
What does that look like 10 years from now? Right? You take certain markets, it's like, well, you can't enter those markets anymore.
No, they're going to
Gatlinburg
be
is one of
locked out without $250K to spend to get into them.
Right. I think so. Gatlinburg is always the one market that I use as the example to say this is where markets end up if they just continue to go with more and more competition.
If we all put them at the top of our there list, right?
Yeah. So
what, it's like a 2-bedroom goes for $900K and it makes $70K revenue.
It's insane. It's gone to the point where now some people are still making money and cash flow and everything in Gatlinburg. It's extraordinarily difficult to do that, and a lot of people are breaking even or just slightly losing money, but they have that cabin in Gatlinburg, which they absolutely love because it's an amazing place to be. Apparently, I've never been, but people love it, right? And so, but what happened before? But like before, it was so easy to cash flow in Gatlinburg, and now it's like extraordinarily difficult to because there's so much competition. It's literally got to the point where if you're building a new property, you have to put an indoor pool to even be considered worthy of like.
It's ridiculous. Right. And that's what this is. It's like you start to see like the highest tier of amenities go across everybody. And then there's like very little and no way to differentiate because none of us have yards. We all have a house, an indoor pool. Oh my God. Like then it's just like this race to like all this perfect product that everybody has.
It's a race to the perfect product. That's a beautiful way to put that, because the reality is that most of these, how do I put this? I talk to a lot of people where their budget doesn't allow them to be the best, right? Mm-hmm. And they're going into it with the mindset of, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to go over the top. I'm not going to worry about these things. I'm just going to get a good property. I'm going to put it up. And they're not thinking about like, how do I dominate within this market? Mm-hmm. And every time I hear those people going to do that, I'm like, you might break even, but you have a good chance of losing money. And today, which is, June 20th of 2024, you'll probably be just fine, right? You'll probably be just fine today because we're not in a crazy recession. Something insane has not happened. But when we hit that recession, good luck holding onto that property, right? Because these properties that are better than you, which is the strategy we've just been talking about, are going to price themselves at the exact same price as you, and you are not going to get
a price war. As soon as like
war.
The spending on vacation per family starts to go down, we're all going to be in a price war. And then if you don't have that margin, you're underwater. Right?
And that's the thing.
I have a $50K margin on that Geodome house because I have a 4.5% interest rate, and like I just know that like you could push me way down before I left, but you can't push my competitors down much more before they have to exit the market.
Have to exit. That I think that's going to be the next recession. We're going to see so many Airbnbs go up for sale after.
But we're seeing it. We're already seeing it because in real estate prices have bubbled to this unbelievable point. This is something that you and I have talked about. Maybe it's something we could almost end on for the group, is that it's a really scary and hard time. That's why, like, as a service, what we do exists, because it's not only difficult to find something that cash flows at these prices, but we're at risk of a housing price correction that has hit some of the country. It's like it's not been consistent. and like more markets are riskier than others. So it's a hard time to find a market where I'm confident that my 500 to 1,000 to $1 million house won't lose value, and that's the
Right.
scary part this year.
Yeah, it's we've gone back and forth on this one. You're not wrong, without a doubt, when you say that. It's always, my thought is always like thinking about the people who sit back, right? And they're like, I'm not going to buy. I'm going to wait. I'm going to wait. I'm going to wait. I'm going to
Yes.
wait.
Yeah.
Those are the people I think that they're still making a mistake too.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. Because there's always a deal
Because
in every housing
they've been
market.
saying that since, some people have been waiting since 2008. They're like, yeah, I'm going to wait for it to crash again, then I'm going to buy at that point because that's going to be the best point. We're like, okay, well, that was how many years ago, right? 16 years ago now, and the housing hasn't crashed like it did in 2008. And so then, therefore, what are you waiting for?
I don't think waiting on a correction or trying to time the market is ever the right idea at all. I just think it's worth knowing that certain areas of the country are bubbling than others. I would just be more selective with my location. Knowing that Chicago is up 10% in appreciation in the last 2 years, and knowing that Phoenix and San Francisco are down 15%. So the Midwest and the Northeast is looking a lot safer than the West, the South, and the Southeast from a probability standpoint. What's the percentage probability? Because there's always like it's always a zero. It's never like a guaranteed, right? And it's people have been flashing it for the past years. It's going to go down. It hasn't gone down. And if you didn't invest, you lost a lot of money. But I think I would just be more selective over where I go and the size of the property I buy, knowing the risks are elevated than normal.
Fully agree. I think that's a huge part of being a real estate investor, is to be able to have a feeling of like the market that you're entering into. We talk a lot about short-term rentals and the cash flow and, you know, how to make money and all these different things, but you still have to make sure you're making a good real estate play in the first place, right? You're not overpaying for the property. You're not, getting a property that needs a ton of repairs that you can't even afford, and then all of a sudden you can't even get the amenities in there. Like there's you have to make sure it's a good real estate play in the first place. But if you are going to enter into a market where maybe it is, there's a little bit less uncertainty, you've got to have the mindset of like, I'm keeping this for 5 to 10 years, right? If you're flipping a property, this is where flipping a property is extraordinarily dangerous, because if you buy a property for $1 million,
this is the worst time to flip a property.
Yeah, right. You buy it for $1 million, and then like a year later, it's worth $800,000. You've just thrown $100,000 into it, and you can't even get the money back out. You're screwed. You're underwater, right? Like that's where flippers lose the most amount of money, because then they have to try and hold on to it so that they can wait it out till it goes back up, and they have to hold it for like 4 years. But that wasn't their game plan at all. Now they're, again, completely underwater. Whereas a short-term rental, the game plan really should always be, I'm going to hold this for the next 5 to 10 years, right?
And like, even if the housing price goes down, if I can get enough cash flow, that won't really matter to me. And that's why I feel like we're so comfortable advising people in markets that have higher risk from a price standpoint. Because if I can help you hit 25%, 30% cash on cash, even if your appreciation comes at like the 25th percentile of historical averages, you'll still make a great return on your money.
Right. And if you wait it out, and if you're not planning on selling it for 10 years, right? Or you have zero plans to sell it, you just want to continue to hold it, and that's like your retirement plan. And you know what I mean? Like you're a high W-2 earner, you're working in your business, and you just want to keep building up these Airbnbs off to the side. You're not even thinking about the fact that it's gone down. Just like when you buy into the stock market, it's going to go up, it's going to go down. Forget about it. Just, you use it when the time comes.
More about time in market than timing the market, right?
Exactly, right? So I mean, but this is the whole thing, right? You have to make sure the property cash flows so that you can continue to hold it for the next 10 to 20 years. If it does not cash flow, you're going to sell it sooner than you want to, and you'd never want to be forced to sell the property. That's when you lose. And that's why we're always focused on how do you win in the next recession that is coming. Whatever that recession is, 2008, COVID, 9/11, like those are all the times where it was like everything went to shit, right? And it's like, you got to be able to make it through that time period. If you can, then you've just won, because now you're entering into the next series of growth, which usually lasts anywhere from like 8 to 10 years, right? I was a financial advisor before.
Why I like national parks too is that they're regional drive-to markets, and historically in recessions, regional drive-to markets do better than fly-to markets. Like you're less likely to take that trip to Hawaii than you are to drive 2-3 hours with your family to an Airbnb, because it's just a cheaper trip overall. It's
a different strategy. There's multiple strategies. Like, and that even makes me wonder, as you say that, I know we need to wrap up a little bit here, but just thinking about like cities. Cities are technically fly-to markets, right? If you were to take Nashville as an example, they're living in Nashville.
They can be both. Like, yes, they're mixed.
You would pull anybody that's like close enough to drive in, but there are a lot of
Chicago's both, like to drive to and a fly to market, right?
Yeah.
Drives here and the rest of the country flies here.
Right. I've driven to Chicago so many times, right? So like, you're not wrong. But it was just an interesting thought that I had, where I'm like, if you're just 2 hours outside, you're a drive to. Because you get everybody.
Hawaii, you can't drive to any of the cities in Hawaii, right? So it's only a flight. So some cities are like only. And some are
But
like,
I mean, Hawaii is such a unique example. I'm trying to think of like what would be another example. I think Kissimmee is an example of a fly to market, right? Where there's
yeah,
probably like 80% of
yeah,
people who are flying to Disney World in
yeah,
comparison to driving to, even though there's a crazy amount around, there probably still a ton flying there. Same with New York,
yes,
would probably be another really good example of that as well. Obviously, a ton of people going in, but it's interesting because 2 hours outside is drive to, so you capture everyone within the city. So it's almost like a
yeah.
direct inverse of each other, right? Anyways, man, this is exactly how I expected this call to go. I wish we should do this on a weekly basis.
Yeah. Yeah,
um,
well, how about this? If you're watching this and you like this content and you want us to do this more, like let us know and we will. And if we don't
Chris,
get enough
comment.
feedback, then maybe
Yeah,
you won't see as much of us.
comment. We can start doing like live analysis or something. Maybe we just like rip together back and forth. I know at one point we were starting to go through Port St. Lucie there, and it was a little bit slower and drier, but like it was actually analyzing the market a bit. Comment, like, share, whatever. If you made it all the way to the end of this,
The two
that's
hours.
impressive.
You love
But
data. If you made it here, and you should
yeah,
book a call with us. We'd love to
yeah.
talk.
If you made it here, well done. That's impressive. Definitely reach out and let us know you made it to the end. Dan, man, appreciate it. Head of data for STR Search. Love having you on the team. It's awesome. It's for reasons like this. I've never met anybody else I can rip like this. So I hope that we work together for a very long time. But appreciate it again, man.
Likewise, John. It was great to have on. And for everyone watching, you can find me on Instagram, danb.bnb.
Link down
Or
below. Link down
yeah, like
below. Go check them out. All right, guys. Appreciate it. Till next time.